The Lamar Jackson drama is going to continue. The Baltimore Ravens and Lamar have had talks about a deal, and it does seem like the two are still very, very far away from each other. That led to the Ravens deciding to use a franchise tag on him. If he ends up playing on the tag in 2023, he'll make $34.2 million. Now, he was placed on the non-exclusive franchise tag, which does give other teams the chance to offer him. But the Ravens can still match any offer sheets or acquire 2 firsts in a trade. It's a very complicated situation where Lamar clearly wants a big deal and a lot of guaranteed money that nobody other than the Browns are actually willing to shell out. Other teams are going to decide if they want to take a shot on offering Lamar, but I wouldn't bet on it, and it doesn't appear that that's going to be the case from early reports anyway. That being said, there is no doubt that he has been one of the best quarterbacks in the league since he was taken in the first round back in 2018 after a very successful tenure at Louisville. During his college career, Jackson really did establish himself as one of the most exciting college football players of all time. He set a ton of records, and he was always the guy to watch on the field. His performance in 2016 was especially impressive after he threw for 3,543 yards, 30 touchdowns, and only 9 interceptions, while also rushing for 1,571 yards and 21 touchdowns. That season made him the youngest player to win the Heisman Trophy at just 19 years old. That led to him being taken by the Ravens 32nd overall. He was the 4th quarterback taken in the draft, and he was supposed to be a project for the Ravens, but because of an injury to starter Joe Flacco, Jackson ended up starting in week 11 of the 2018 season. Now, his rookie season had some ups and it had some downs. He definitely struggled with accuracy and decision making sometimes, but you could really see that flash of just how well he could run the football. He finished the season with 1,201 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, while also rushing for 695 yards and 5 touchdowns. In 2019, Jackson really came into his own and just took the NFL completely by storm. He led the Ravens to a 14-2 record, and he won MVP. He threw for 3,127 yards, 36 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions, while also rushing for 1,206 yards and 7 touchdowns. Jackson's rushing yardage set the NFL record for the most by a quarterback in a single season. He also became the first player in NFL history to throw for over 3,000 yards and rush for over 1,000 yards in a single season. Now, 2019 was such an insane year for Lamar that it was near impossible to follow it up in 2020, but he did get pretty close. He led the Ravens to an 11-4 record, and for the first and only time in his career, Lamar ended up winning a postseason game after Baltimore beat the Titans in the wild card 20-13. But the Ravens did bow out the next week to the Bills in a game that, it could have gone better for Lamar. He ended up throwing a pretty costly pick in the red zone, and then he later suffered a concussion that just ended his season, essentially. Lamar did finish with a very good statistical season with 2,757 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, plus 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns rushing. It was a very impressive 2-year stretch, but we just haven't seen that version of Lamar since. The Ravens made the very obvious decision to pick up his 5th-year option ahead of the 2021 season. Lamar still played well, but it wasn't up to par. He threw a career-high 13 interceptions and had numbers just dip across the board with 16 touchdowns and 2,882 passing yards and 767 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Lamar was offered an extension ahead of 2022, but he decided to decline it because he felt like he was worth more. So Lamar played out the 2022 season, and again, it was a lot like the season before. He was good, but it wasn't up to par with his MVP level. He went 8-4 as a starter and passed for 2,242 yards and 17 touchdowns to 7 interceptions and 764 yards and 3 touchdowns rushing. And for the second straight year, Lamar missed time due to injury. In 2021, it was an ankle injury in week 14 that ended his season a little early, and last year it was a knee injury that again ended his season early and kept him out for a lot longer than was expected and out for the Ravens postseason game. Now, I have a lot to say about the Lamar Jackson situation, and it's a very difficult, complex situation to kind of lay out and to kind of understand because there are so many moving parts in it, and I first do want to start with Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson is somebody, like, as a Commanders fan, you know, I would love to have Lamar Jackson on my team. I think it could be huge. I think he'd make the team so much better, and I think he'd make most teams better. You know, he's a guy that has been considered, you know, a top 5 quarterback in the league for a bit. You know, that 2019 season was magical. What he did truly is something we'd never seen before. Like, you know, we had Michael Vick, and Michael Vick did change the game to a degree, and then Lamar Jackson, you know, took it the rest of the way. What he was able to do was incredible, the way he was the true number 1 running option and throwing option. I do view Lamar Jackson as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. No, I don't think he's up there to the same degree as, you know, Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, some of those really top guys. But, you know, my personal opinion here, and I might get some flack in the comments, I don't think the difference between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, I don't think is very far. You know, we get a lot of, you know, talk about how Josh Allen hasn't had good enough weapons, yada, yada, yada. Go look at Lamar Jackson's weapons. You know, who's his number 1 wide receiver been in Baltimore? You know, he's had some really, really bad wide receivers, and they've done a horrible job drafting wide receivers as well. Obviously, he's had Mark Andrews, and I think that is a big thing. You know, Mark Andrews has been his safety blanket, his number 1 guy, so it's good that he's had that. But at the end of the day, I think Lamar Jackson is somebody I do think gets a little bit more hate than he should. Does he have the greatest arm in the world? No, he doesn't. But do people severely underrate his arm? Yes, his arm is not nearly as bad as some people make it out to be, as some, you know, I guess like mainstream media people make it out to be. Lamar Jackson has a solid arm. It's not great. It's not going to blow anybody away. It's not always that accurate, but it's better than a lot of people in the league. And I think that's just been a really good hole to kind of focus on with him. And I think the narrative has probably gone a little too far at this point. I think he's absolutely somebody worth all that money. If I were the Ravens, I would definitely sign him. And I think Baltimore is trying to sign him. And that gets to the most complex and difficult part of this entire situation. And that's the contract. I have no doubt in my mind. I think Lamar Jackson wants to continue to be a Raven. I think the Ravens want to continue to have Lamar Jackson. They're just so far apart on the contract. And the biggest reason for that is Deshaun Watson. You know, last year, what happened with Deshaun Watson has completely changed contracts, the way they're viewed, everything. You know, he got, I think it was $230 million fully guaranteed from the Browns. That is an absurd contract, an absolutely absurd contract. Lamar Jackson's like, okay, they reset the market. Obviously, Lamar Jackson doesn't have an agent, so he doesn't have, you know, somebody kind of advising him there. But Lamar Jackson then wants this fully guaranteed deal, and if I was in his position, I would do the exact same thing. The reality is that he's not going to get that. Nobody's going to give that to him. That one contract was such a big outlier, and it's not something that any other owner is actually willing to do. You look at bad run franchises, teams that will spend recklessly and are also really, really stupid, and the Browns are pretty much at the top of that list. You know, in my opinion, you got Washington, you got the Chargers, and you got the Browns. And for the most part, those 3 are usually just on my Mount Rushmore of like, they have no idea what they're doing. And the Browns, you know, they're up there. You know, they've done a great job at that. And so them giving Deshaun Watson that contract is crazy. It's nuts. Lamar Jackson now wants that contract, and he's not going to get it. And that is why I think they put the non-exclusive franchise tag on him, is basically to say, Lamar, go talk to these other teams, look at them, talk to them about a contract. You're going to see what they're willing to offer you. And it's going to look kind of the same. These other teams aren't going to offer him totally guaranteed deals, especially Lamar Jackson, who has been hurt for the last 2 years. He's definitely not going to get a fully guaranteed deal. But I think the Ravens basically want him to kind of get a better look of like, hey, this is your value. Let's look at what other teams are offering. I know the grass is, you know, always seems greener. It might not be in this situation. Take a look at it. And that also makes me think that no one's actually going to offer Lamar Jackson. I know a lot of teams have already been out on him, and that has surprised a lot of people. But I think it does make sense when you kind of sit down and think about it. Obviously, the Ravens have a chance to match any contract. contract. So in my view, this kind of almost would make the job a little easier for the Ravens. Basically, another team offers him a deal. He's like, okay. And as soon as he's okay with that deal, the Ravens are just like, okay, yeah, we're good with that deal. If that's your value, that's what another team's value says it is, then we're cool with that. We'll go ahead and do that, and we'll get 2 first-round picks if you do leave, if we do not want to do it. So the Ravens can get 2 first-round picks if they decide to let Lamar walk. I don't expect that to be the case. I think 100% they just go ahead and match any offer sheet that another team offers, and it makes the job a little easier for them. At the end of the day, I do think Lamar Jackson is going to get paid this offseason. I don't see him playing another year, especially at $35 million when Daniel Jones is playing on 45. Lamar Jackson, I expect to get some kind of deal done this offseason, and I think he'll be worth that deal as well. I don't think another team is going to offer a fully guaranteed deal. I think owners have basically all kind of bonded together and been like, what Deshaun Watson got? We're never letting that happen again. I think Lamar Jackson is going to get a new deal this offseason. I don't think it's going to be fully guaranteed, but I do think he's going to be in Baltimore for the long haul, and I think right now, we're just waiting, sitting back and watching a game of cat and mouse until eventually I do think everything kind of works out and we see Lamar Jackson in Baltimore long term.